Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? I am so happy to be back for another episode. This should be episode 14, but it's gonna come out as 13. Reason is I recorded a ton of material yesterday. It was probably about 2 hours worth, and we did a lot of things. We built the logo. We used Canva for that, which I would highly recommend for web developers. It's a free design tool. Would highly recommend checking that out. So we built an interesting logo, just something quick on the fly. Built a little breadcrumbs component that needs configuration. Just did a few things here, cleaned up some of the task stuff, and I think a little bit of our icons and sidebar, but just chipping away on the mission as well. We tried to build a modal component just to also wrap the entire application in a custom provider that we were building. We were met with mediocre luck, but the reason why I'm saying all these things in kind of a way that you guys might be unaware to, if you're following the series, is because when I played back the footage that I recorded here on the face cam, it was all in slow-mo. So I don't know if it was something to do with my phone, if like the processor had an issue. Yesterday it did pop up with like some sort of processing thing. Or if I had accidentally recorded the episode in slow-mo, could have happened. But either way, I do have the screen recording the audio for it. So if people really want it, I'm happy to push it out. But I do like to have all three. The trifecta is what I call it. And ultimately, one day I do want to integrate music in the background too. But one thing at a time, because I'm always listening to pop music instrumentals in my headphones while I'm doing this. And I love it. But anyway, the channel is gaining momentum and traction, and I'm super, super grateful. Like, genuinely, you guys don't understand. I love doing this, and the fact that I just get to do this and share, and people are asking questions. Some people are asking, how can I get, let me close this YouTube. Some people are asking, how can I, learn from you more. I have a Teachable link. It's a course in my description, and maybe I can actually show you guys the Teachable link. This is what it looks like. Program with PAGs, unlock all the secrets of real world coding. Boom, boom, boom. Of course, just your Teachable landing page. You can go ahead and enroll now. And right now I just have one course I'm working on and uploading to stuff, and that's going to be the Mastering Front-End Software Engineering from Basics to Enterprise. I really do work on the course hard. I curate it and edit it and cut it up really, really professionally, or at least my best that I can. And the idea is to kind of curate and distill all these are like longer form, drawn out things, right? Of course, that's sometimes a little bit longer content. But you could see some of the applications I've built and like this TensorFlow body recognition thing, this merge sort visualizer. I don't think I'm going to build all of them in the course because some of these are larger builds, but I'm going to definitely go over the concepts and things that I've picked up along the way of being a hopefully decent software engineer, right? So go ahead and check that out if you are curious, and it really supports me a ton. If not, just if you want to support the channel, a simple like and subscribe helps so much. So with that being said, we crushed the first goal of 5 subscribers, 100 views. The second goal was just smashed right through as well, which was 10 subscribers, 200 views, and I literally recorded that yesterday, I think it was yesterday's episode that we lost, talking about how that second goal just got smashed and we want to set a third one. And the third goal should be, I think 20 subscribers, 500 views. And as of today, we've already we're already going to crush that. So I am super grateful because, guys, like, I just love doing this where I can like debug, tweak, build stuff. And hopefully it's quality, and entertaining for you guys, at least to some degree, or fruitful in knowledge. So, that's enough about kind of the channel as a whole and the software engineering course, let's dive back into the project. So yeah, just edited a few things, added some just tasteful, things, little curation in yesterday's episode. This little X icon is not going to be here forever. That was just to test that our delete endpoint was working. So we're going to have to configure some stuff because it is working, but I'm not requerying task, or the reactivity of the application isn't being good. So we're going to have some stuff to figure out. Here's some stuff from the Modal store, Boolean value that we were configuring. Basically, the idea that I wanted to build with this modal in our own provider was going to be have the modal template exist at the root of the application, the top of the project. And then I wanted a store where we can obviously adjust the state. That's what stores do anywhere in the application. And then the other thing I wanted to do in the store was somehow pass in HTML that would render on this base modal. So the base modal needs to exist at the front of the application, at the top layer of the application. At least z-index wise, it needs to be at the very, very forefront, or at least one of the forefronts of the application. And then, but we need to be able to access it anywhere. So if the root application's here, and then we have, let's say, pages here, and then components, and then subcomponents. So like, for instance, we have our root application, then an in-app layout, and then a Kanban page, and then base columns, which have base cards. And you could see there's like 4 or 5 different layers. Basically, I want the base card, when I click this, to emit all the way up that stack. And we can pass functions all the way down, but that's just hard to maintain. So that's why we want to do it through a store and hopefully a context provider. But I tried to make a custom one instead. So I deleted most of it. Let's go to our store. So we're going to work, I think, a little bit on that today. Here's roughly what we were looking at. Just a simple thing where I was hoping if I wrap HTML anywhere in the application with this modal store dot whatever, right? So if we go to our base card, if we import modal store and instantiate it, and if we just wrap, this was going to be the goal. If we wrap modal store with content, and let's say this is going to be new content or new pop-up, right? Whatever we want our modals to look like, that's what I wanted to transfer all the way to the store and then render outside of the base modal. So I think we should still push for that. And then the idea is we wanted to store the base modal all the way at the top of the layout or near the root of the project. So that was the goal. And again, the reason is because this is our modal up here, this red thing existing all the way at the top of the stack, unaffected by all these other components, which is awesome. Why is that? Oh, my hand was on the wrong key. So let's try to do that still. Modal store.content. I really thought that this would work. Modal store.content. So because I thought we could set the content here, right? The children. Let me get out of the column. We just need these kind of 3 or 4 components. And I removed the base toast just for the time being. But the idea is I want to have custom stuff that I could pass into the modal anywhere, and I want it to be really lightweight. Like I don't want these big, I think sometimes, not that people overproduce, but like this is a really lightweight button where it's very simple, not a ton of stuff going on. Like it's easy to adjust if we ever need to in the application. That's how I try to look at some of my components, is just like as lightweight as we could possibly make them. So even like cleaning this up, we could stash this all in a CSS class, for instance. I believe we can do that. So if we go like this, And well, let's not get too far. Actually, I don't want to get too distracted into another component that's not. It's already good enough. It's already fine, right? But the point I'm just trying to show here is all these components we build, we want them to be really lightweight and easy to manage and configure and reuse and customize. That's the whole point of components, right? And the better you can do that, the easier your application seems to be for maintenance. So that's the goal here. Let's see what's going on. So we have base modal. Cannot destructure property children and param undefined. Okay, so we're back to what we need to. And I love these lightweight stores again too, because we don't need all that extra stuff for this type of application. At least it seems like it. Now, if we ultimately need to do stuff with other stuff, we can pop it on in here. So like we can swap stuff over to Redux if we ultimately need to. But I don't think we do. I think we can get away with a lot of this lightweight kind of style of producing software. So that's the goal here. Saw that bug yesterday. I didn't include await, not the end of the world, but probably should. Okay, so the thing with this modal store, we need to figure it out because it's going to be the same way we use the toast as well. So I need to be able to set the children somewhere. And I thought I could pass it in here. So maybe we can just pass the children. This might be a weird kind of thing to do, but maybe we could pass the children into the modal store. And return the children, I think. Wonder if that's possible, right? Return, maybe we'll say return just children out of here, right? And get rid of them here. So there's no content that we pull out. We just literally use the modal store to wrap stuff. And then what is this? There's server-side components by, so do we have to go to use client? Let's see. Because I really want this thing to be lightweight, you know, modal store. Okay, so I can't instantiate it anymore. Looks like that's becoming an issue. Okay, what does this do? Let's see. I know this is like atypical, but I'm just kind of exploring the possibilities here that we can try to see what would happen. So function modal store, return the children, and then ultimately, right, if we can even just cut out the base modal component and just literally drop the children off here, right? Like that's the goal. Modal store. I guess that technically would basically be the base modal. Not sure if this will work or not, folks, but let's give it a go. Let's see. So cannot destructure parameter modal store export default function. Okay. Looks like we're having a tough time emitting precise data. So I'm going to think about this in a different approach. Let me just take a second. But I am enjoying the creativity of it, where I'm trying to push the edges of and explore, I should say, the edges of React, right? So let's think. Modal store, new pop-up. Basically, the reason why I want to have new pop-up here is because if this works, then we can just populate our, like we can just build out our modal here. And then if we ever need to use a modal anywhere else, we could just build it out on that page or in that component. And then I can pass all of my custom task things in this like modal store or this base modal component. So I'm going to try to do that actually. And we'll just maybe look at it as a base modal, just a simple modal component. Maybe we'll start there. See how that goes. So in our base modal, we're going to need the children. And let's get the types right. So react.react.node. Great. And we're going to pop that in here. Let's see. So I'm going to wrap it in frags, and this needs to be absolute positioned or fixed position, one of the two, and then we'll have some sort of background shadow type thing. But for right now, I'll just say background red 100, and this will ultimately be a shadow, and it needs to be justify center, item center, min height, screen, because this is going to be the overlay, or I guess the underlay to the modal, and the modal will exist on top of this div, this wrapper. So however we get this wrapper, it needs to exactly be like this, where it's just like the whole screen. And then this right here will actually be, let's say background secondary or something. And like, I don't know, we'll just give it a padding 8, right? So, and that's going to be our little modal. I hope that makes sense to people. But if you see how it's like layered behind, boom, perfect. So we don't want it to be, maybe I guess the sidebar can be accessible. We'll deal with that in a sec. But this is going to be our pop-up basically. And let's, how can I do this? I'm going to import global styles. I'm going to work on getting the, what's it called? The, that shadow looking correct. So .css, oh, that's globals, not styles, globals. And we'll say shadow, box shadow, and I'll show you guys a quick trick. So here is like typically something I'll do is just this type of shadow. Let's see. But what you can do, and this is like a really faint shadow, all we need to do here is instead of have 10 pixels, because watch, if I put this here, I'll show you guys shadow. Actually, it might not register because CSS does have a class called shadow. So we'll say box shadow or something. Background shadow. Let's pop that over. Background shadow. If you see the edges of the box, maybe I can make this shadow a little bit darker. It should, there should be a shadow there. So you see that? And what we're going to do is basically just expand the shadow. So if we do 100, it should grow. The shadow should be much larger. But we're just going to do like a ridiculous, so do you see how it's like faintly growing? We're just going to do a like 10,000, right? Like just so big that it ends up being the entire, actually maybe it's this one that we want to do, right? Because we want it to be like the whole screen thing, right? But not 0.9, that's pretty dark. We'll just do 0.2. Just needs to be like this faint overlay. So, and that's what our background red should be. It shouldn't be actually on the child, though the child will need its own shadow just to make it look proper. This is going to be the background. So that's the underlay of this modal, and you can see the differences. Maybe we will make it darker because we do have a darker application. So we'll try 0.5. So this needs to be, and unsure to why. why it's doing some weird spacing and stuff, but it needs to be this like dark thing over here, right? So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out in a GIF. Or I guess we're figuring it out now, technically. Let's see, 0.2. I don't know which one's the shadow. I don't know which side. But let me go ahead and put shadow 2XL here. 2XL, and let's round the corners 2XL as well, just to make our modal look a little bit nicer here. And we'll give it a PY of, let's think, 24, PX of 16 maybe. So it should grow us a little bit more. We have kind of just a sizable modal right here. Say width 390, maybe that'll be our minimum width of the modal. So do you guys see it, how the modal's kind of coming together? It's like this new screen, and it should, again, with the shadow behind it, we should have this, because this is basically what we're trying to do, right? If we have BG black, is like have just a faint black. That's pretty much it. It's just like a transparent black thing. So maybe we could actually just do that. Say background color black. And then I'll just look at the CSS properties and we'll just make it boom, just like that, right? It's pretty much all we want. Nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy here. So background black, boom. There we go. Perfect. And we just need to deal with some spacing issues here with the sidebar. And I think that's because of the stack of where the thing is. But the idea is whenever we need this modal, I don't know where we're calling it now. I think at the in-app layout is where we're calling it. And that is exactly where we're calling it. So the idea is whenever we trigger it, we should see it pop up and like kind of gray out the back, maybe a little bit more. Like I said, we have a darker application, and all of this other stuff shouldn't be clickable. So that's perfect. And we can just focus on like, here's the modal, whatever the modal may be. It might be a task we're looking at. It might be a specific thing. And let me see what I can do with the modal. If I don't stash it in the in-app, maybe we could just put it in the pages that we need it. And looks like we don't need the modal store. We can trigger it through the modal. So let me think about how to do this real quick. So if we import use state from React, const say is showing, set showing, use state. It's going to be a Boolean value. It's our data. And we'll start with false. And this will only ever occur. Let's wrap it in frags. If the modal is showing. So we'll need to trigger the modal or emit some sort of function out of here to flip set showing. That's kind of it, I think, right? So maybe we can do that. I guess the method would be to change set showing to something else. Let me think about it. So if we go to the base card and let's import a modal. And again, this modal is to kind of customize tasks, to delete them if you want. So let's do it this way real quick. But we're probably going to end up taking it up 2 layers. So this will be modal header, right? And maybe we'll say like task. Maybe we could pass in task, like something unique to each task, just to see roughly the idea. Obviously, it's not going to be built out fully, but we can start to see what should be coming together. So if task exists, then allow for this. Perfect. Okay. And base modal, let's close modal store. We're probably gonna end up deleting that, I think. So set showing. We're gonna need some sort of trigger, I think, to pass into the modal. So we'll say trigger here, and we're gonna pull out our React node. Say interface iProps. This is just defining our data structure, or our data schema rather. React, not React element, but React node. And trigger will be, should this be a Boolean value or a function? I'm still thinking, right? Okay, so iProps, we've defined our thing and our trigger. Because there's two ways to do this. The modal can handle itself, at least the delete state, but we need some sort of button then for the modal to be triggered. So either the modal, I know in Vue you could do named slots and have a template in the, like you can pull out a name slot from the child. I don't know how to do that in React. I'm sure they have the same functionality, but I just don't know how to do it. So my other idea is let's pass a function into base modal to trigger it. I think that's going to be the next best thing, right? So we have children, and we'll say the trigger is going to be, we'll say function handle modal. Nope, not task ID. We just want to literally have something that can flip the state inside the modal. That's pretty much it, I think. So let me look at base button, because I think we want to do a similar thing, like have a custom function, basically. And then if we look at base column and see how we pass in a custom function, we just arrow function into it, it looks like. So I think that's roughly what we want to do. But then the state wouldn't, trying to think about how to handle modal. Trigger, it's not going to be a Boolean. It's going to be a custom function, a void function. So trigger, and if there's a trigger, I think that's how we want to. And let's look at the base button. How do we do custom function? On click, we're using the custom function. So can we have the trigger set showing to the opposite of is showing? Will that work? Some sort of thing like that, I guess. Kind of exploring a little bit of Next here, folks. So trigger, it's a custom function. Duplicate identifier returns void. Because that seems like it'd be the easiest way. So let me pull up GPT to see how to make this work. I am passing children into a modal and want to pass a function to trigger the modal open. Here is my modal. Here's a parent component trying to use it. Boom. Let's see. So I guess I could omit, right? So every time I click the button, first you need to remove the trigger function inside of base modal and use one of the pass from the parent component, because that's what I didn't want to do is have the parent kind of handle it, but I guess that makes sense. Base modal handle trigger. Okay, set modal is open, and then if modal is open, modal content here. So they have it set up a little bit different. It's basically saying use the Boolean value, but then I don't understand why it would kind of do that. So the other way is just to, I guess, do it in a parent function. So handle modal. We could say import state, right? Is modal open? Set modal open, right? Some sort of state name like that. It's going to be a Boolean value, false. And boom, here we go. So handle modal. And actually we can just have the modal literally. Well, how do we emit in React? That's what I want to, or how do we emit in Next.js? How to emit in Next.js. That's what I want to know. It's basically like the base button, basically. But I want a more direct way than passing a function into a component that then changes the state upwards. But I guess that is pretty much what emitting is. Router events.emit. Okay, so let me think about it. So handle modal needs to accept. What does it need to accept? It needs to accept. Because then I guess the other way is then we just take it all out of the modal and we would just have, let's say, like this ellipsis icon, or for right now just say like open modal, or like toggle modal, like we just have some button that on click handle modal, and basically we don't even need to do that. It would just be an arrow function that can just set is modal open, just the opposite. And then we would just conditionally render the modal based on this state, right? But that's all the work we'd have to do in the parent. And I'm trying to be a little bit more conniving about it, or more cheeky about it, I think, where we don't have to do all this. So let me show you how this would roughly work. And I think everything would mount on the DOM as well. Maybe we don't want that, so let's delete handle modal, and I think this will work. Yep, toggle modal, there's one open, there's another open, boom. So modal 5, and if we say modal 2, so that works, but I want the modal, and it sounds picky, but I want the modal to handle all of it, right? Modal 4, so that's another modal, that's modal whichever, and we can't scroll, so let's refresh. The modal background also needs to close the modal. So there's a few things we need to handle, I think. On click, this needs to close modal. Some event needs to emit upwards or make the modal not be open anymore. And this is why I like the modal having its own state, because the modal itself should know when it's closed or when it's not, right? So we're gonna make that happen. Is modal open? Set is modal open, or set modal open, I guess would make more English sense. Boolean value, that's the data type again. Boom, false. And every time we click the outside, we should always set modal open to false every single time. So if we click this, boom, it should exnay the modal. The reason why it's not working is because this modal's state currently isn't depending on this. So that's what we need to adjust, is modal open somehow from the parent. Boom. So I don't know if that worked or if it was just reloading because I saved. So we don't want it to be in the parent. We just want the functions in the parent. Let me close is modal open. Let's not have toggle modal. Let's do is modal open, and then, oh, you know what we do need is a button. So this needs to exist in the child. So that'll be where the button can get triggered. Toggle modal. Now we can access this. This makes sense now. Okay, cool. So it's a lot easier than I was making it out to be. And this button, all it's going to do is just arrow function, set modal open. You could say true, I guess, every time. So now we click modal. If we click the outside, modal closes. But if we click here, shouldn't close. So that's a problem. So we need to configure that. But I'm actually going to make this always do the opposite of is modal open. Actually, no, we're gonna do just hard code, keep it simple. So the opposite, all it's saying here, if I did this just for future reference, if you want to toggle Boolean values, it's just going to do the opposite. So if the modal value is true, this is saying set it to the opposite of true, which is false. If your modal value is false, it'll just set it to the opposite of false, which is true. So it's just a way to make it just do this, like a light switch. But the tricky thing with a modal, if someone were to somehow open it and trigger it, I don't want this to do the opposite. In theory, it should never happen, but I don't want it to do the opposite. I just want it to always close whenever they press this. I don't want it to be conditionally rendered on any sort of state shenanigans that the user might find. So we've got ourselves a little modal, and it's not going to be the button. Technically, it'll be the ellipse icon, which keeps it easy for us because then we can just pop the modal here and import the ellipse icon into here, into the child there. So we're importing state and the ellipse icon. And instead of open modal, now we'll just wrap it around the ellipse icon. And let's get rid of that in our card. It shouldn't be there anymore. So every time we click, boom, now we have a modal. And we obviously need to do some centering and figure out how far up the stack we need to go until we could center the modal. But I would figure with absolute positioning, it should be good to go, right? Absolute, but I know it can only be absolute to the parent container that it's in. That's the problem that we're going to be experiencing. So I did like the context provider way of passing in all this HTML and then somehow having this get delivered to a base modal content. So basically I would set base modal, this component would exist at the root of the stack was what I was trying to do. And maybe we'll make that happen still. So base modal would exist, let's say like an in-app layout, for instance. So it'd be all the way up here. And then somehow we need to, this will be like modal store content, right? Like somehow set the content anywhere, modal store context, right? Use state, you're importing a component that needs use state. It only works in a client component, but none of its parents are using use client. So this is not a use client thing. Maybe it should be, because technically it is going to be on their app. So this is the modal now, and that's like how far up it needs to exist in the stack is all the way up here, right? So, but I want to be able to set the modal somehow from way down here. So if we arrange the stack, it goes in app, then it goes to pages. So we have our Kanban page, and then it goes to base column, right? So it goes in app, page, base column, and then base card, which is holding our base modal. So hopefully you could see that's like all the way to the base card. We got to emit that stack for things up if we want to trigger stuff. So I guess the question is now, how do we emit HTML either to a store or some sort of context provider, and then deliver it all the way up here, modal store context. And that's why I was trying to configure the store yesterday, or do the thing, because I want to be able to click this, but it triggers this modal. Either that or center this other modal. So I don't know how to do that. There's a few things we can do. One is do this larger layout that I'm talking about. The other is really make the app more shallow. So instead of having base column, for instance, as a component, we would just pull out base column, like all of this stuff, and we would just build it in the page, which is what we largely did at work a lot of the time. Was just like, no, we'll just like build these things here, and then you're only emitting upwards one level. But when you have to emit like 3 or 4 things deep, it's a really clean layout, like when you look at maintenance and management. But the challenge then becomes is some of these decisions are more architectural, how the project's laid out. So that's the challenge currently. But the good news is we do have a modal. That's the great news. And within this modal, I can stash this delete button. Let's get it out of there. And here's what I'll say, like delete task name. Let's see, that'll be like one of the options. You can delete task fix icon issue, right? Let's wrap it in quotes or something so people know it's task they're deleting. I think this is one of our lint errors, is we are not allowing quotes into the, we want to be able to allow quotes in our JSX though, not in our HTML or not in our JavaScript or TypeScript. We want it to all be single quotes. Can you adjust these lint rules? Let's ask ChatGPT. Okay, it says sure, no problem. Let's see what it comes up with. Rules, quotes, errors, singles, allow. Oh, nice. You could do it just like this. Cool. JSX quote. So this is what it's come up with. We don't need that. Maybe it just needs single quotes. Still should not be an issue. Can be escaped with, oh, I see. Use apostrophe, something like that. So delete task fix icon issue, right? Or maybe we build out the modal to be a little bit more, let's see, because I don't want it to be this this ugly thing, and it's all way off into the, you know what I mean, way over there. Oh, that's all we have to do. We don't need to do all that other stuff. Oh my goodness, folks. Oh my, sometimes I've overthought things before. That is certainly true, and that was an example of one of them where we don't need to do all this other stuff and have base modal exist way up there. We'll just pop it in whenever we need it. I'm so happy we figured out that problem, because geez Louise, that would have been a whole thing. That's just beautiful. Happens, and I watch my footage and review what I say, and I say it's like 80% strong. And there's moments where I do think, and I'm like, no, maybe that's not the best way to approach it. Like sometimes I sleep on stuff, or just that was a moment of just overthinking, right? But there has been times where I'm sleeping on stuff or seeing like little errors in my code or things I forgot, which is odd. Like it happens, you know what I mean? It's part of the software development lifecycle. But now we have a modal, which is working. Now the next problem is we need to have the click stop if there's another thing in front of it. So you already know what I'm going to say. In Vue, you could say on click stop. So it will only do the elements here, but I don't know how to do this in React. So let's give it to our trusty thing, ChatGPT. I want the click to not propagate to behind so how it works in the DOM, it's like here's an element on top, here's more elements, right? And when you click, it's going to go through the entire, like all the way down, right? That's how the click naturally is going to work. It's going to go through all those DOM elements, right? And when you say click stop, it's saying like I'm not going to let this click propagate to the next layer or to the next element behind it or the next div that's wrapped around it or whatever. So, and we need it on both things, because if we click delete, it shouldn't close the modal, or it should maybe like throw a spinner and then close the modal after it's successfully deleted or something. But we certainly don't want it to close when we click on the modal. That's certainly what we don't want it to do. So I want the click to not propagate beyond where the click should be. In other words, I want the modal to not close if I click on the modal itself, only the background. And we'll also add a little X in the corner. But let's see what ChatGPT says. Let's see. Stop propagation. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. So let's see how to integrate it. Stop propagate. Okay. Just like this. And it looks like stop propagation. Where does he use it though? Or does it always, it just knows, I think, maybe to not propagate. Let's see. Handle background click. Oh, okay. Okay, so it does have boom, handle background click, handle modal click. Okay, so boom. Just like that, money, folks. And then you click the background, closes the modal. That is what we want. That is precisely what we want. We could also put a little X up in the corner of the modal that's just hard-coded in the modal, right? And this would be, let's see. Can actually put it here. That's where it would go. And basically on click, it would just always close the modal as well. So set modal open to false. And handle modal background click. We can actually just pop that in there as well. I don't want functions if we don't need them. Even though that is, I think it is a performance thing in React to do that. But if this works, we're just gonna roll with it. e.react.mouse event, right? Boom, don't have any things. We just have our JavaScript in our template. Let's see if everything still works though, the same. It does look a little more Vue-y though. I will give it that. It does dirty up your template doing that. And then if we click the X, closes the modal. Oh, that. Then if we, it's the entire space around the X. Okay. So everything's still working. It is a bit of a it does dirty up the code, I think, for maintainability. So, okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to go back to a more readable version. Handle background click, and we won't say that. We'll say handle close modal, because this is going to be something we always use on both this and that. And this will be a lot more clean of a structure, or just template, I should say. But it's more of a preference thing. I don't think either way is right or wrong. Just don't want to dirty up the template too much. I think it's sometimes cool to say, like, look how cool of a software engineer I am. I can do all that cool stuff, and it works still, you know. But other times it's just about, like, here's a simple thing, and it's a clean, and it's really clean and readable, right? Sometimes that's a little important too. So, so maybe we'll just keep it at like that, you know. I think both work. Both are same, you know. But oh well, I guess this one doesn't work anymore. But we do want it to be clean. That's the biggest thing. Handle close modal. Oh, handle open modal is still false, so we need it to be true. Boom. Should work. If we save, and boom, bada bing. Let's get our class names in there. Class name with full. Why is it giving us an error? Oh, I see. Okay. So, and what it's doing now is it's going to make all of this area, if we see that, it's going to make all this area close it, but we just want that X. So what I'm actually going to do is build a wrapper div around this X, and just the X itself is going to have this onClick function. So now I could click that wrapper div, and I think I actually need to, we'll say background blue, right? Maybe we'll say background blue 500 just to make it really obvious what's going on. And I think we need to flex. So it just wraps, yeah. So now when I click this space, it's not going to close the modal. Only clicking this X will, or outside. Excuse me. So obviously we're dealing with some padding stuff too. So I'm going to remove some of the padding, and we are just going to go with padding 6, I believe. Padding 6, and we'll say items start and justify center. So all of our items should start at the top of the thing now. Great. We got a good padding. And we don't want our modal way over here. We actually want it at the end. So we'll say justify end, get that X on the right side. Remove the backgrounds. Don't need those. They look ugly. And boom. So we can keep that X there. Obviously it should be an icon or some sort of thing, but that's fine for now. And I don't actually want to do too much padding below this on the top. So we can either do absolute value and then make this relative, or we can and then how do you do this? I think I would go top 0, right? Something like this. And left 0, or excuse me, and then if we just do like left 6 and top 6, or excuse me, right 6, something like that. Let's see. We're gonna mess around with it a little, folks. Right 6, there we go, and we'll say top 6. Oh, too much. Something like that is almost right. But that's plenty adequate, right? It's doing what it's supposed to do. So we'll go top 4, right 4. So it should just kind of be maybe top 3. Don't want it too ugly. And this needs to be a thing. So this will close. Everything in our modal now is kind of being taken care of for us. And we'll actually say opacity 50, hover, of course, opacity 100. That's what we want. Cursor pointer, just your basic CSS stuff, and boom. So people know, okay, I can click that, boom. Just like that, easy peasy, easy peasy. Maybe we can have this be a class, just this transition thing as a CSS class. We'll just pass it in everywhere because it's like our hover class that is used kind of on everything, even these little buttons and stuff. Maybe could speed up some DX time, some development time. Let's go to our prettier. I don't like when the line wraps like that. So let's save again. I like when my stuff is all just boom. I didn't like it with this this thing broken and this thing broken. I think it dirties it up, makes it harder to read on the fly. This seems to be a clean component. So we have our button to trigger it, kind of our trigger button. Boom. Modal 5, delete task connect DB. And this is where in our modal now, we can actually go ahead and start building out like a little header. Class name, we'll say font bold maybe. And text large. Maybe not bold, but semi-bold. And I think that could actually be the task name, right? So task and task dot name. Boom. So now we know, and we could probably pop this guy right next to him. We don't really have designs for this, folks, but that's fine. We're just designing on the fly. And this will be text small. We'll say font normal or something. Font normal. And opacity 50. My ears started ringing, so I am going to turn down the volume. I think it's my own voice. I hear it in the playback, and it's just really loud right now. Okay, so I'll say item center, gap x2. See if that'll do it for us. Items, not item start. Forgive me. Item center. Boom. So connect DB. And we're going to make this kind of like a red button. Class name, background, red 500. Say PY3, PX8. There we go, rounded, we'll say 80 pixels. I'm going to make it a darker red even. We really do need to kind of configure some of these reds and stuff. And of course, cursor pointer. We just need something to hover. We'll say opacity 50s, active scale 90, and transition, of course. So now when we click, that might have actually deleted the task. Whoopsie daisy, did not mean to do that. Might have lost our connect DB task. Sorry guys, we got a little too excited there. But we're going to use a very similar modal for this add task as well. So new task, that'll be the ID next to it, which is awesome. We'll be able to read it very quickly. If we did ID, maybe we can add one of these little underlines next to it just to add a little bit of that style we're kind of going for. Whatever style that might be. A good one none the least, right? So let me go to the breadcrumbs file and steal that little underline. I think it's just this guy. And I'll put it here, I think. And we can go div around this and say class name. Flex call. Let's see if that does it. Oh, it did already. Cool. So that's our little style. I think it looks good. Just like a little chef's kiss, right? So we'll have delete task in there. And maybe we don't want it any particular width, but just to take up the entire width of the modal. I like that. And below this H2, this is where we're going to have all of our custom like inputs, right? So we'll have an input here to, and this will be like the task name. And we'll be able to edit all these things. And I'm actually going to do this gap here. This is pretty cool, guys. Gotta be honest, I'm really enjoying this. Okay, so class name, we'll say flex call, and gap y4, just to make sure everything's kind of gapped apart. Oh, and I guess this would need to be width full now because it's now affecting the width of the button here. And we do need to build a base input. Did we? I don't know if we did. No, we didn't. Okay. So I do want to build an input component that we just kind of have an input ready to go that looks good and it's proper. We'll have to, because obviously we don't want one of these ugly components here. Doesn't look very good, but of course we'll get it looking clean and proper, like these delete task. And I almost don't even want the delete task button to be there. I almost want it to be like delete task and then another modal, like, are you sure you want to delete the task? So yeah, maybe that's is that doable here? If we say delete, if I say delete task, base modal, would that work? So base modal, and it's like, are you sure? Maybe that's, are you sure? Right? So you kind of have like two opportunities, but then we got to choose a different trigger for the button here. Are you sure? I kind of like it. I kind of like it, to be honest. And I do like the idea of having a universal base modal, but maybe because this is getting a little bit bloated, we do just have a task modal specifically. But this would be like, basically it'd say delete here instead of that. So this is like what it would kind of look like, is like delete, and you'd click it, say, are you sure? And then we could close all the task here, all the modals. I think that's kind of like you're respecting your user a little bit. Because if you just have a delete, someone accidentally clicks it, can't say I'm the biggest fan. So I am going to keep it the other way though, just for the time being, but that is something I do want to think about in the future. Let's add a few tasks here. And let's get this wrapped out of the base modal, or out of the modal within the modal. But that's why I do kind of like having some sort of universal modal, because we can easily just do that. Now the only caveat we would have to do is just have some sort of named slot where we can pass in a custom button, right? So I don't know if you could have two children or named slots. Is that a thing? Does React have named slots? Named slots. Let's see. React doesn't have an official JSX of named slots, but it's pretty flexible to allow named slots in different ways. So for those who are unfamiliar with the Vue ecosystem, the name slot basically is like, okay, I can have a component that accepts children. So that's everything we wrap within the child, right here. But then in Vue, you can have a component that accepts multiple different children in different parts of your component. So it's kind of a weird thing to think about, but you would name it, and then you can have these multiple different areas to adjust. So let's see what React has. So React has default slots passed as children property. Here we go. Multiple slots, formatted date. Let's see. So your children, you could pass them in here. Header, content. Okay, so we're gonna end up doing something like this then. If oh, this is exactly what we wanted to do with the modal store anyways to begin with. Same with the toast. So I wonder if this is how you just pass in templates everywhere, just as props like this. That would make sense. And then holy shoot, we can actually layer this modal all the way at the northern part of the application. We actually don't have to build a base task modal because I could put all this into a const. I guess I could do that anyways. But let's get back to the custom button here. There's different ways to architect, of course. So it looks like I would have a button, and we could say this is where I think it would exist in the props children function. Okay, so it looks like that would exist outside of this. Something like that, I think. Card footer. So if we do card footer, let's just look at this. If we have header, footer, test, props.children. So it's still a child, I guess. So if we just accepted the props, right? Props, how would that work? And then we say props.children instead. So our children are still there. I just don't understand where we pop the card footer. So we have card footer, then the three components built together look like this. Card, oh, within the card. Okay, I see. So I would, I guess, have this here, looks like. Card footer. Okay, let's see. Let's see if that is kind of how it's working. I'm a little unfamiliar with it, to be honest. So you have card props, let card footer, let header equals this. You know, it'd be easier is just asking ChatGPT. Right? Okay. Can you, let's just go ahead and go to our modal. And we'll go ahead and do this and delete this. And I'll just ask ChatGPT. Let's get the children back there. Can you make this so it accepts like how it does in Vue or some version of it? Show me how to use it in my parent component. Here is the child. Boom. React doesn't have a concept of slots like Vue, but you can achieve a similar behavior by using special props for different sections of the modal. You define the props. Okay. Existing code, it looks like. Okay. So it says you define interface iProps, kind of like this. Where's our boom content? So it looks like instead of having the base modal exist as a wrapper with children within it, we would just pass all the content into it. So we don't want footer anymore. We would just have this would be the button, I guess, instead of the footer. And really this button is this button. We just would pass the ellipse icon into the adult. So we don't need a header either. Not going to put that into our modal. We'll just make those as we need them. And here we'd say content and button, it looks like. And boom. So that is going to fix that problem or these errors. And if we adjust the content to this ellipse icon now would go back into the parent. So our base card. Let's put the icons together, I guess. Makes sense. And in our modal, instead of this, we would have button would equal this. I think that's how it works. And then it's popping up, perfect. And then all of this would be a content prop that we need to then pass in, it looks like. So we'd fit all of this into our content, and I'll do that now, but I'll show you a cheeky workaround instead of doing that, because that just looks like not fun. And we can not have a child there. So we're going to try to do this another way, which is just pulling out our const modal content here, pass it into a function, and we'll just return it. It's an easy way to clean up your templates too if you don't want to build full-on custom components. I don't know if it'll work as a prop. I have a feeling it will though. So we pass it in here, and then we just pass this as a function into the prop. Let's see. I know it works in the React template. Let's see if it works as a pass down prop. I think it is. Nice. So boom, here's all of our modal content. Now we can get it out of our template so it's not as ugly, right? And you can even nest all of this stuff too if you need. So like const, like what do we have here? Const card header or something, right? You can always do this within your React components, at least if they're functional components. So let's say you want this part of your template to just be like refined and a lot smaller. Pull it out, and then boom. Now all of a sudden you can pass this in, const header, and nothing's changed. So it's just dragging. It's like building components kind of like in the same page. So and people might say, well, why would you do this? And this is actually a regular conversation I had with one of the devs at Babson. And the reason why you want to do that is so much like Tailwind. Like why do you want your Tailwind here on the same project file? Like why not just keep it in another file and import it every time? The reason why is because it's faster sometimes. That's why. Or in this case, we could still use base modal, and we just have task modal content, I guess, instead of modal content. We'll actually rename it to task modal content. And now we don't have to build a task modal, like a base task modal component. We can just keep our same thing here. What is task modal has an any type? That's fine. We can keep our same component of base modal and just customize the content every time, which is the same thing you're doing with children slots, but I guess this is a more just clean way of I don't know. I like the fact that we're having a page like this that's just task modal content, and then even within the modal, now we can pass in like the are you sure thing, right? Like, so we can have delete. I think this will actually work really well. So let me pull this out. I'll say const delete task modal. And this is a modal that's going to exist within our modal again, right? So that's what we're setting up here. And I always just naturally do the frags. You don't really have to, I guess. And this needs to be a, let's see. So we're gonna pass in a base modal here. And this is why we did it, folks. This is literally why we did it. So base modal. And I could pass that content into there. And this can now, instead of say this, it can just say the word, or whatever we want, right? We could say, we can even build out another component here, but like delete, right? Boom. Then it should say, are you sure? I'm sure. Delete the task, right? So there we go, folks. I think that's a successful nesting of modals, and literally this, we can even say, you know, custom button. I won't make a custom delete button here. We'll just make it actually the same thing as this. We'll just pull in that class and boom. So that way it's all good to go, right? It's clean, it looks good. It looks like we're having some sort of issue here where we're not getting the full width, but we can go ahead and pass in the task, delete task. Sorry if this is getting a little confusing, folks. Hopefully not too bad, but delete task 12, right? We could say like ID 12 or task, maybe task name or something, right? Delete loaders for base column task. We'll just keep it delete task. I think that's fine, or delete even. Just keep it short and sweet, right? And I think that does it in the base modal, it looks like. That looks like is our issues. We need to say with full here, I think is where our issue is, or one of these. I guess we can actually get rid of that. Don't need that. We can keep it as lightweight as possible. Boom. There we go, folks. So I'm thinking about wrapping up this episode here shortly, but this is clean. This is coming together clean. So we have our task modal that's nested inside of our task, or excuse me, we have our delete modal that's nested inside of our task modal content, which is nested inside of our card component. So you could see how quickly the structure can get really, really hard to work with if we have to keep doing this, because this is also what you kind of don't want to do. But it's working. It's actually somewhat of a streamlined way to do this part, I think. But the other part is considering other alternatives of, like, if there's a way to actually do the context provider of doing like what we did here, base modal, and then we can somehow just pass in like content into a base modal. Like basically, I guess that is what we're doing. But if this could exist at the top layer, I don't know. Well, maybe it wouldn't save us any time at this point. Maybe we're already kind of doing what we need to do. But this is how it's going to end up kind of being, is we'll have multiple inputs here, and all these inputs will be pre-populated with all their task data, and they should be kind of up and down of each other. And these will all have, like, you know, we'll make the inputs look a lot better than this. Maybe I can do that right now, actually. But the idea is we want it to look good like the rest of the application, which is coming together. We want these extra steps that are just like, you know, smart, savvy, I would say. And we could even add padding, I think, to this content. Delete task modal content. Do kind of want it smaller than the other task, or the other modal, right? So I wonder if this will work. Class name P10. Let's just see if it makes it smaller real quick. No, I want this modal to be smaller, but that's not a big deal either. But we do need base inputs, and then we need to populate these modals with all the task data, and we're going to use this same modal for adding task. Same thing. We're going to keep everything the same except for delete. We'll just have a add task button. And this isn't going to be the only button we need, actually. We also need a update. So this is what this should actually kind of look like, is update task, right? And then we need to make it text center because we don't want it way out there. Boom, text center. So when we update, obviously we'll get a spinner back or some sort of loader. Maybe we should use the base button. For both actually all these buttons should probably be the base button. Now that I'm thinking about it, we need to add loaders to the base button so it's all pretty and looks good. And when it pings off the server, we need to add a loader and then some sort of success response and then a success visual on the front end, obviously. So that's some stuff we're going to need to do, but I do think for an episode, this is a pretty successful episode because we're going to be able to have our inputs. We can delete tasks still, I believe. So we have 3 new tasks at the bottom. Let's just configure this. And I'm really excited to do this add task because then we can, are you sure? Oh, and then we need to close all these modals. But let's just see if it works. Make sure the functionality is still there. Boom, it is. Okay, cool. So delete task modal and then base modal button. Okay, we do need to close the modals after. Let's think how to do that. Because it is existing in here. So trying to think because the modal might need to have a response passed into, again, a trigger, like a hard close trigger or something, which will just be a Boolean value from a success response we get. Like if it was success, trigger to close the modal, right? So that's kind of something we're going to need to add as well. But you can see rapidly with software how nesting and how one component within another component works a little bit. So I'm trying to think how we can do this. So delete, are you sure? Yeah, this might be something for me to sit on for a sec, but I think the goal is I'm going to have to pass in some piece of state from the parent into the modal. So we'll say state, and this will be some sort of enum, open and closed, right? And it'll have to be like this, like set modal is open. So the modal will be open if this and the state. Oh, I need to pass that into here. And the state equals open. So both things need to be there. I guess, well, if state is there, sorry guys, this is going to be a bit of a complex logic thing. So if state is there and state equals open, or I guess the other thing would be, or is modal is open and state isn't there, right? And no state. Meaning we didn't pass in the state, so the modal can still open. So on all of these, we're not passing in state, so it shouldn't be affected by this new thing that we're adding. And that's what we call solid programming principles, is the previous functionality of these other things are not going to be affected by future functionality we're adding. And this new piece of state, basically what it is if we pass it in as a trigger thing, right? So if I say state, and this will be custom in the future, but I can say close, and now this modal should, in theory, not open. In theory. So and it's not, which is awesome. So that means it's working. And what that means is we can, after this handle delete, we can have like a fake timeout to dummy a success response. Well, actually, I guess we can just do a real success response because it is doing this, and we need a piece of state. We need a piece. Oh, pop down too far. So we'll say const current. Say modal state and set modal state, and that's what we're going to dynamically pass into the modal. So I hope that kind of makes sense. That's a little bit convoluted, and maybe there's a better way around it that did get a little bit heavier, which is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep these things as lightweight as possible. But the modal state is what we're going to pass into this close function when we need it. So on a success response, right? So let's see, const set modal state. If success, set this thing to false. Else maybe we'll have like throw error or something, right? Async await. Just realized we weren't awaiting that. Test store, why is it? Boom. Okay, so if success, type void cannot be tested. Okay, so we will check for the ID if it still exists then in the, so I'll do that in another episode because my brain is starting to hurt. Check for ID still existing in database. And that will be our success state. So if ID is still there, boom, set modal to false. But we'll just test this out for now. Set modal state to, oh, I'm sorry, it shouldn't be a Boolean. It needs to be the same enum of open and close. And it'll start as open, where you're allowed to open it. And then should close after this handle delete function gets fired. So let's see, modal state, why is it not, cannot find name modal state? Should be able to, it's right here. Do I need to pass it in as, oh, you know what, I might need to pass it in through here. So this is where the complexity can definitely start to rise, because there's got to be a better way to do this. So I'll definitely sit on it and think about it. Task modal content, because yeah, now we're getting, now if I don't pass in the other stuff, then I need to pass in the task name into the modal and all this stuff. So the task, yeah, and it's just going to get a little bit stickier. Yeah, so I'm going to think of a different way of doing it, but that is going to be some sort of thing like that the state is going to be, and I'll dummy a thing for you guys right now to show you what I was thinking. So let's do state right here. And I guess I could follow through with it. I just want to not overcomplicate it. So it should be open. It should still work, right? Okay, maybe the idea is not working. So let me undo that, and let's just sleep on. Let me get that all out of here. Let's sleep on that idea for a bit, or at least marinate on some of it. Is modal boom? Oh, that's what we want right there, right? And again, reason is sometimes these moments you can do a lot more harm than good in an application, rather than just like take a beat. Maybe that's a good sign to slow down. We've done enough great work today. One thing maybe I could leave on or leave for the next episode is certainly the base input. I think that's an easy win, but I think we're going to wrap it up there, folks. This is a good modal and great functionality added to the application. Again, it's coming together. I'm really proud of it. We cleaned it up. Let's look at it, from kind of a full screen view. Let's sign out. But it's coming together a little bit more, So let's continue with Google. Oh, that's not actually what I wanted to do. I just wanted to check out the home page, make sure we're still looking proper, which we are, which is awesome. We still should be signed in. If not, sign in here. Need to figure out what's going on here. I did try to mess with that. Couldn't configure it. Tried to mess with the layouts and whatnot, but maybe it's the class I'm passing into the clerk provider. I think that would make the most sense. Then we get into our application, looking good. And we need to do some loaders. So, oh gosh, there's just work to do. Let me go back to the controller. Let's add some task, because we haven't done that in a little bit of time. So new task, we'll say new task ID 1001. So add loaders to columns. Let's add that task. Oh, the server needs to get back up and running. Let's try that one more time. Should work. We need to get our reactivity back, because we stashed all those functions into the store now. So that's what our issue is. So get reactivity back. Make that another task. We really need to get this add task button up and running really desperately, because This is not very fun to hard hand add in task when this is supposed to be a task manager, folks. It's the goal of the application. That's the name of the game. Name of the game, folks. So let's see. Doesn't look like that other task was added. Let's see if this one is. Get reactivity back. Nice. Add loaders to columns. Okay. Waiting for our database and everything to connect. Boom, there it is. Let's try. See if that works. Add loaders to columns. Okay. What else do we need? Base input component. Maybe we could put the connect database back in there as well. That's something we do need to add. And then what do we have? Loaders. Oh, we did have loaders. Okay. So conveniently, I can delete a task now, and I know exactly which one I'm deleting. So this is perfect. This is perfect. So we'll have base input component, that's to do, and I'll put connect DB. We will put that as high. I believe that was high, and it's done. I think that's one of the tasks we deleted. Base input. Okay, cool. Got our reactivity back, and I think the next thing we need to add is probably going to be the front end modal. The add task modal needs to be completed, which is kind of dependent on base input and a few other things. So we need the front end modal. We need the loaders and the buttons. So I'll say front end modal. Okay. Oh, that last task can get added again too. That's so irritating. So irritating, folks. I'll just leave it at front end modal, and we'll kind of get back to. Oh, maybe it did get added. I'm sorry, I was in the wrong. Yeah, it did. Okay, connect DB did get added. Sweet, it's working. It's working. Yeah, guys. So sometimes these are brain heavy to narrate a little bit what I'm going through and still come up with great software decisions, kind of while I'm narrating them. It has been a bit of an onboarding process for me, where it is harder on my mind. But, oh, I didn't need that to be done. Oops, that needs to be to do. So we'll go ahead and delete that. Are you sure? Yes, we are. Front end modal needs to be completed. But yeah, these are harder concepts sometimes to narrate and walk through. I know on one of the videos I was talking about reinstilling the base column data, for instance, back to the page component, but it should exist in the column. The smart columns is what I'll call them. Smart columns is what I'll call them. That's kind of punny, but good with the words, right? Trying to be. And that's what I'm kind of talking about, is like sometimes my head will just start hurting and I forget that, okay, these are things that I've already thought or thought through pretty thoroughly. So front end modal, and then we'll need to build all the functionality on the back end to change columns, but I think that's enough for now. For now, I think that's pretty adequate. And this comments thing, that's going to be an entire service we need to think about. So not sure how that's going to work quite yet. I'll talk to my buddy. He's a very talented software engineer. Then we need to finish the breadcrumbs component. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, links in the description for the Teachable course. Quick like and subscribe or comment. That all just supports the course or the channel as well. I would really appreciate. There's also a donation link. So very grateful for any sort of donations. This is stuff I really want to do and to build on, and obviously the software engineering program and supporting the channel helps all the way. So I would really appreciate those things. Yeah, and if you guys have watched this far, I imagine this is something you want to see continuing. So I hope for great things. Oh, and then we need to connect back end to front end, right? To front end for modal, for add task modal. That's one last task I'll add, but I'll sign off. I'll get that all configured here, and Guys, thank you so much. So cheers. I'll see you on the next one.